Well, good morning. Welcome to STL History Live. Our presentation today is a CSTL tour program called Mining in St. Louis History. I'm Tammy Goldman, Director of Tourism and Visitor Experience, but today I'm your host and technical assistant, really, to ensure the program runs smoothly. As you know, due to our present situation, nearly all of our programming is virtual. However, the Missouri History Museum, Soldiers Memorial, and our library, well, not our library, I take that back, just Soldiers Memorial and the Missouri History Museum are open to visit Wednesday through Sunday. Because your safety is our top priority, the capacity to the buildings are restricted, and we do require or would like advanced reservations. All tickets are timed entry and free, always free. To reserve and plan your visit, please go to our website, mohistory.org. Before we begin, let me just make a few acknowledgments and go over a little housekeeping. I really want to thank those in our audience that are members of the Missouri Historical Society. Of course, we couldn't do what we do without your support, and we thank you so much. I will provide a link during the program if you are interested in becoming a member, if you are not one already, or you can visit on your own at mohistory.org/support. We also have a great appreciation for the Zoo Museum Tax District. So those of you in the St. Louis City and County, we thank you sincerely for your tax contributions. As far as housekeeping, just to go over a few things on how the program will run today. It will be approximately 20 to 30-minute presentation, followed by a 10 to 15-minute question and answer. But as I know, Amanda, if you have any questions during the program, please submit them in the Q&A section, and I bet she will get to them during the program. But if she doesn't, she will get to them after the program. And we'll do our best to answer all your questions. Today's presentation is being recorded, so if you'd like to view it again or share it with your friends, it will be posted on the Missouri Historical Society's YouTube channel in just a few days. As always, your feedback is so very important to us. So if you have a few moments when the program is over, a survey will pop up in your browser. Keep an eye out for it. It's a Kobo Toolbox survey. If you have a few minutes, please complete it. We would be very appreciative. So that's all I have to say about that. Let's get to why you're here today. The program that is presented this morning is by our community tours manager and developer of the CSTL tour program, Amanda Clark. The presentation this morning is Mining St. Louis History. With that, I am really fascinated with this. So I'm really excited about this program along with all of you. So Amanda, the screen is yours.
Hello, everybody else. Thank you to Tammy. I see we have a nice little crowd gathering here today to talk mining with me. Normally I do, our virtual tours are really interactive, and we chat a lot the whole time. And this is one of those topics that we end up getting into some really good discussions with. So I look forward to your questions afterwards. And hopefully all of you will join me on our St. Louis Underground virtual tour that we offer regularly, and we can really talk about some of this stuff. A little bit about me. I have been leading walking tours and bus tours and now virtual tours of St. Louis for well over a decade. And while this year, we started walking tours in June. One of the cool things about this year for me was that I got to start doing these virtual talks and tours, which meant topics that I never could have dreamed of taking people on tours of, I got to do. And the geology of St. Louis is something near and dear to my heart. In college, when I had to decide between a history degree and a geology, it was a tough choice, and I'm happy with the choice I made, but you'll find that geology makes its way back into my history all the time whenever I'm studying stuff. So being able to talk mining and the way that has affected St. Louis history over time is really special to me. I am not an expert. I do not know everything, and I definitely don't know the mining exports of coal in 1875. If you do, that's totally cool. And I would love for you to add that into the chat and to bring that stuff up. You're welcome to bring up things and we can talk about it that way. So let's kind of start as a background image here. This is the Laclede Sewer Pipe and Fire Brickworks. And here's a guy coming out of the mine. So this is someone who's been working in there. He's, wherever he is at the spot, which is near kind of Maplewood and Dogtown area now. He's, they go in, they bring the clay back out. And we're totally going to talk about that stuff later. That's what you're looking at there. So this talk is not a talk about the general geology of the area in the sense of no caves, no sinkholes, no springs, no things like that do show up on the St. Louis Underground talk. And I do know some of you have been on that, so you may see some of the stuff that we've talked about there when it comes to mining, but we're not talking about caves, although I'm happy to answer questions at the end. We're going to talk about how geology employed lots of 19th century and early 20th century St. Louisans, both mining and doing stuff with the stuff that was mined, and how it shaped the city. Where do you see it now, and where is it? There may be places you drive by every single day that you have no idea used to be a clay pit or a quarry, or and there are traditions. There are big pieces of St. Louis traditions that were brought about because of mining. Before we get started, we're going to take a quick trip. We'd like to take, I like to time travel a little bit. We're going to take a really quick trip to the 1904 World's Fair. You're looking at mining was a huge part of the fair. They had the mines and metallurgy building, which we'll look at in a second, but they also had a working coal mine that you could visit. And this is an anthracite coal mine that you could go into, and they recreated the experience of going down in the mine. They had, you could see how did men work down in there. They had a recreated mine disaster that you could see. There's a lot, people were really fascinated by this. It was a big draw. And here's the map of the fair. And if we look, so we've got the art museum here, and we've got the Grand Basin, and right here we have mines and metallurgy. And so that's a huge building. They devoted a lot of space, and all of these states had, not every single one of the states, but a big chunk of the states that were that had mining operations in them were displaying their products. And everybody from Utah to Alaska to Pennsylvania, Ohio, Nevada, they all have these really amazing exhibits. And I wish I had time to just walk through those exhibits with you. But here's an overview of the floor. And I feel like it doesn't quite capture the immensity of these exhibits, but I highly recommend visiting the St. Louis Public Library's digital collections. They have all of the mining exhibits. They have pictures of the mining exhibits from the different states that were in the mines and metallurgy building. So, around 1900, St. Louis is one of the top, not only are we one of the biggest cities in the country, we're one of the top producers of clay products and, clay, tile, basically anything that you can make with some clay. We are bringing it out of the ground, processes it, manufacturing things and sending it out. And that's one way people are making big fortunes here around that time. There's also in the late 19th century, a mining stock exchange that comes out. So that's even something where people are making, there are a lot of this capitalists and the industrialists in late 19th century St. Louis are also making big amounts of money by investing in mines all over the country. And so this is something they're looking both out and in for, and it's a big piece. You also have, neighborhoods that totally owe their existence to the mines. If this was a virtual tour, I would do some trivia right now and make you guess which ones they are. But the two big ones are Dogtown, the Dogtown neighborhood, which has a bigger name of Cheltenham, that was, it's all attributed to communities that grew up around mines in that area in the mid 19th century. And in the Hill neighborhood, our famous Italian neighborhood. Originally, it was African Americans and Germans that were living in that area in the mid 19th century, and they were working the clay and coal mines nearby. And then you move into, and then later in the late 19th century, the area becomes overwhelmingly Northern Italian, and that is at the turn of the century, in the early 20th century, over 90% of the men that lived in the Hill neighborhood were working in the mining or the brickworks industry that was right along Manchester Road. So it's a big part of their history and their culture. You have Volpe sausage, which is one of the world's most famous or country's most famous sausage companies that still has their home in the Hill neighborhood. They got their start when the original founder of the company invented a little sausage that fit perfectly in the pockets of the miners as they headed off to work. So there's you can still find this stuff in little ways. The big ways, of course, are the fact that our city is made of our red bricks and terracotta and things like that. But the little ways are out there as well. So some very basics about Missouri geology. It's really cool. It's a really cool place when it comes to geology. We have super old mountains, the Ozarks, the St. Francis Mountains. They're like really old and volcanic and all that kind of stuff. We have glacial deposits throughout the state. We have box canyons. We have even a mile-long sinkhole near the Ozarks. It's called the Sunk Land. And so we have all kinds of neat stuff happening in Missouri. And outside of St. Louis, mining actually started in Missouri in the 1700s. And this, the French explorers, people coming to this area, they were in a passionate search for gold and silver. And just like the Spanish were finding elsewhere, they were sure they were going to find it in this part of the new world. And they find some, but they don't find that. They find lead and iron, and they find tin and barite and all of these things in the ground. So in the form of minerals, and these little mining communities pop up around these mines out in south central Missouri and southeastern Missouri. These mining communities pop up, and that's what brings people to settle there. So while the fur trade is making a bunch of money, that's not something that people settle around. People are settling around the mines. The communities crop up, and roads are built to get between these things. And they're the roads that a lot of us use now to get around certain parts of the state. So in St. Louis, all that stuff comes together. So you got old rocks, old mountains, they push up against the Paleozoic rocks that we live on, and that makes the mineral deposits outside. But because we're situated in those two rivers, the Missouri River, Mississippi River, and all the other various ones we got around here, those things have moved throughout time. And oceans have come and gone, seas have come and gone, and they leave behind porous rocks that lets the water down in. That's where you get our caves and things like that. But it also left behind organic material that created clay and coal. So that's why we have all that here. And we happen to have a little fold of rock that runs kind of near Forest Park and Cheltenham, and south of there. There's a spot where the bedrock kind of folds. And because it folds, that clay got deposited a little bit deeper and it didn't get washed away. And so that's why we have this really great deposit of a high quality clay. Here's a mid-19th century map of the St. Louis area that kind of maps out what's happening where. We have coal measures, even though we see mostly limestone quarries up in that area once mining really gets going. You have the limestone noted in an area that is a lot of coal. So this map is interesting. It doesn't reflect the actual mining that happens in these areas. Although in some cases, there might be a few. And then I have this is from the exact same map that I found earlier, same document. And this is geological section of the formations in St. Louis City County. And if you note the little thing at the very bottom, it says the figures are estimated, and some are taken from the record of the insane asylum well. So it's talking about the big mental health facility right off of Arsenal that was built in the mid 19th century. They took some of these samples from there. All right, so we're going to move to mining now. So this is a map that is done by the Missouri State Geological Society. And I have the link at the end. Happy to share the link to this map because it's a great way to spend the rest of your afternoon. I hit an animation here. This is a map that you can look at St. Louis and add different filters. And for this one, I've added in mining. And so this gives me a map of the entire St. Louis area with historic mining locations. And then when you hover over those little circles, it'll tell you, was it a coal mine? Was it, it doesn't really do clay pits, but it'll say coal mine or limestone, and it'll show you what was coming out of the ground and when. A lot of times they have the actual dates on it as well. So it's really fun. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is the Old Gravois coal diggings. Diggings is a kind of slang term for a mining settlement. It's something that is pretty common, and it pretty much refers to exactly what it sounds like. In the early days of a mining settlement's growth, miners would just start digging, and they would take what they could out of their hole and then move on to another one. And they had rights to whatever they found in the hole. And each settlement had different rules as far as how wide apart your holes were and all that. So that's what diggings is referring to. It's just kind of a slang term. So the Old Gravois coal diggings is quite a story. It is a whole community that grew up prior to modern St. Louis. And there's a whole book by an author of Mary Joan Boyer, B-O-Y-E-R. She wrote this in 1954. And she does a great job of discussing this. So this is the Old Gravois coal diggings, this area right here. Before Tower Grove Park, although Shaw had his garden over here, but before any of this was public land and before any of this was developed in the way that it looks now, this was an area called Oak Hill. So it's the Old Gravois coal diggings. It's a big name, talking about the mining community that's there, but Oak Hill also lends itself to the neighborhood. And we have Oak Hill Avenue that's right here. And what you see when you if you dig into this Tower Grove South area, you'll see things pop up like Holy Innocents Church, which is used to be right along Kings Highway. Horace Mann School and you have Oak Hill School as well. You have these names that are still out there, but nobody really knows what that stuff is referring to. And it's referring to that coal diggings community. So the coal diggings were all centered around the Russell family coal mines. So this is from the 1875 Compton Dry Map. We have Tower Grove Park here and Russell's coal mines just hanging out right there. And I'm going to animate this map and zoom in so you can kind of see, because what we're looking at here. So we've got this is Morgan Ford and Oak Hill Avenue here. Go in close to the mines. Russell's coal mines, they buy this land in 1805. In the early 1800s is when they purchase this land and start to build their farm on here. The farm quickly becomes a plantation. And there were several plantations actually in this area. Several different families had working plantations that were either farms or mines. And the Russells, they had their coal mines and then later clay mines once they found a good quality clay there. So if we overlay, so this is looking at Tower Grove Park, Morgan Ford is running here and Oak Hill Avenue here. And if I overlay that Compton and Dry map, you can see where those mines were. So the next time you're driving around Tower Grove Park, you can see exactly where that is. And you'll see on the Compton and Dry map, it says Russell Avenue. Is now Morgan Ford. So Oak Hill Avenue running here and the coal mines running there. And those coal mines went up to 45 feet underground. And those things are not gone. So there are houses in the Tower Grove South area in the Oak Hill neighborhood that do have to deal with mine subsidence at times. Still an issue. All right, so we've shifted just a little bit south, a block or two, and we have this is Oak Hill Avenue right here and Gravois, so South St. Louis. And this here is the Oak Hill Plantation. So Oak Hill Plantation, owned by the Russell family, later by the Russell Parker family, had houses here, and you see some large houses here. The mines were active until 1887. A description of the plantation is found in the coal diggings book, and Miss Boyer, she says that is reminiscent of that of the southern plantations of Virginia and Tennessee. And there's something very beautiful about the place. The plantation was known as Oak Hill. So there were enslaved people on these plantations, and mining is something that brought slavery to Missouri in general. But there were enslaved people working on these plantations until the Civil War. And I even was able to find there's Oak Hill hanging out there. I was even able to find this where there was a reward for runaway enslaved people from the Russell Russell plantation. And this is in the Missouri Historical Society's records. Russell family moves, they marry into the Parker family, which makes a ton of money. And this is a house that, one of the mansions before this gets developed into a bigger neighborhood. And this mansion sat at 3405 Oak Hill Avenue. This is in, again, the Historical Society's collections. All right, so we're gonna move away from the Russells and their coal to the Christies. So the Christies are another big name that have parks named after them, streets named after them. They made a big, they were making a ton of money. They made a lot of money in the late 19th century, early 20th century, when the Christie mines and the Laclede mines over in kind of close to the Dogtown area, when they came together. So I'm going to animate this real quick. We're going to dive and take us just a little bit south of the Botanical Gardens. And see, this is where Chippewa and Kings Highway come together here. And you'll see this where the Planet Fitness thing has popped up. You'll see this area right here. This was the Christie Mines. It's one of the largest of the mines and processing facilities in the entire city that was pulling clay out of the ground. And you'll still see that line, that circle, rounded edge there. That's where the train came in there. So we're going to go from here into, this is that Christie Fire Clay Products that was at Kings Highway in Chippewa. So if you're at that major intersection, this is what used to be there. Fire clay is what the clay, like the majority of the clay that we have here in St. Louis. Fire clay kind of refers to the fact that you can get it really hot and it holds together. So it's a good clay for making lots of different products. So moving away from that one there, we're going to move over to the Laclede Christie, which is over near Dogtown here. And so this is the Dogtown, which Dogtown comes as a mining word. A Dogtown comes from the reference to the kind of lean-to shacks and the types of little houses that the miners lived in originally. Those are Dogtowns, and there are other Dogtowns out in the country. There's a famous one in California that's still preserved. I mean, this is a mining term. So this area here is heavily mined, and this is a map. I have the source there at the bottom. Here's a map of all of the mines in the Dogtown and Cheltenham area. If you can see on here, up here, I've got Highway 40, or as it notes on here, the Daniel Boone Expressway. Highway 40, the planetarium. There's some mines over in Forest Park, as well as there are right here, where the Highlands amusement park would have been. We've got all kinds of clay mines in this area. This is a Laclede Brick Company, which is later going to become the Laclede Christie Clay. And this was sketched in 1947. This is what it would have looked like they started in 1854. And up on the hill is the sublet home. So you'd be looking kind of south towards the insane asylum, the mental health facility. You'd be seeing that big dome back south of here. So the Laclede Fire Bricks, found in 1844, goes on to be one of the largest ones in St. Louis, and they were shipping stuff all over this part of the country. This is, once they get a little fancier, this is their head office at 5900 Manchester Road. Laclede Christie Clay Products there. And then this is an overview, again, looking south at almost that same view that we were at of the sketch. Just shows the immensity of the operations that were there. So this is from the National Building Arts Center. If those of you that are into this kind of stuff, highly recommend their website, and also going to visit. You can call and drop by over there, and it's like Disney World for those of us that are into, or the Smithsonian even, of people that are into St. Louis bricks and architectural salvage and just pieces of the city. It's a really amazing facility. All right, so they have a great photo collection too. So here's some men taking clay out of the ground. Sometimes clay is up high, sometimes clay is in a shaft. Right here, it's open. So sometimes it says in the notes for this this photograph, it says sometimes as much as 40 feet of soil is removed. Sometimes the clay is deeper still, and sometimes it's under rock. So they all kinds of different ways that they take it out. And here's some men receiving the clay that's been, it's been carted over to the processing facility. They're getting it loose and raw. And then here's a great image of some men that are bringing some products out of the kiln. And so, not just bricks are made here, but lots of sewer pipe in the form of terracotta is made here as well. This is from the Laclede Christie mine. This photo does not have an attribution as to where it was taken, but if you can let your eyes kind of sink in for a second, and it looks like you're looking at a city built behind him when really it's piles of tile and pipe and all kinds of products that have been made in these brick and tile yards all along Manchester Road. And one of the biggest, one of the big ones was the Winkle Terracotta Factory. And so if you go downtown St. Louis and you walk along Olive Street and you see the Wainwright building, or you see, any of those buildings kind of along that street there, along 9th, 10th, one street up. They call this the Terracotta District. It's its historic designation because of all the terracotta, but we have it all over St. Louis. And the Winkle Terracotta Company was one of the top producers in the country. And they were started here in St. Louis. And there was a man, Joseph Winkle, who started the company in 1882. So late in the 19th century is when he gets into the terracotta game. And something about terracotta versus brick is that terracotta requires sculptors and mold makers and draftsmen and ceramic chemists. So it takes things a little, higher level than brick making. So you have technicians that have to be very precise in how they dry and fire the clay, and they have to manage the schedules. It's totally different thing going on. So in Winkle knows that he's big production there. So Winkle is he's actually from England, which makes a point that a lot of these men were, even though we had a lot of miners were Italian and Irish, we also brought over a lot of English people and people from Wales as well that were used to mining-based cultures in the old world that came here and settled and worked in these factories and in the mines. Right? And again, the Winkle terracotta is what's on the famous Wainwright building. And when he does that, then he gets contracts all over with Louis Sullivan to build other tall buildings. To the left there is a page out of a catalog for Winkle terracotta. And this can be found on the National Building Arts Center website. And they have the whole catalog, and you can look at if you were building a building, how did you pick all your little details? And they would, send you the little tiles that put together. And then on the right, that's the Winkle display at the 1904 World's Fair. And this is a piece of Winkle terracotta. This is an oven piece of ceramic. It's called oven ceramics. And this is currently listed as of today for $400 on an antique site. So this is out, there's lots of Winkle terracotta out there and people want it. So we're looking at the Evans and Howard real quick. This is the Evans and Howard brickmaking facilities. This is along Manchester Road, right next, not too far from Winkle. That's the River de Pere being opened up there along the middle, that dugout area that you're seeing there. And this is a clay pit. And this is one of those images that I found early in my research earlier this year, and I was really intrigued as to where was that and what does it look like now, and what happens to a clay pit when you're done with it. So I researched, found the clay pit itself on list, and here's on the Sanborn fire map. It shows here's the clay pit and all the works here, and this is Hereford and Columbia, and here we are, Hereford and Benton. In Kings Highway and Brannan. So Hereford and Brannan, this is what we're looking at right here where this clay pit is in that image right here. So just to kind of show you, if you're in that area, Try to see if you can see any remnants of maybe a change in grade, or was it filled back in? How did they change that area as the city grew? So that's the whirlwind trip through mining in St. Louis. And I would love lots and lots of Q&A, please. There's so much more. Our virtual tour version of this is an hour and a half long, and it could go longer depending on the group. So there's lots more to talk about. So I'll be watching the Q&A to see if anybody has any questions. And I'll also drop in I'm going to drop in the chat the link to that map that I was able to put the little overlays on so that no one gets anything done this afternoon. You can play with this map.
Well, this has encouraged me to get out and about. I want to go see some of these places and see if, like, you know, my inquisitive eye can pick up on any of these things that happened, 100+ years ago. Can we see anything on the terrain that will remind us of the mines that are below? So cool.
Yeah, there's a church that was demolished not too long ago in the hill, St. Aloysius, that was a historic church that had to be demolished because it turned out it was on top of a mine shaft and it was starting to sink into the mine. So it's still something out there that plagues St. Louis. What's left behind from this.
Yeah, I'm curious if any of those houses that are above the mines, you know, what they have to say. What do they hear at night?
Tower Grove South actually has a couple houses that they're cattywampus, as they say. They're kind of at a weird angle. So Doug has asked, hi Doug, Doug's my favorite. What questions, what plans, what talks do I have planned in the future? I've got a ton of very different topics coming up in the spring. I'll be talking about Three Flags Day, you know, when St. Louis went from being Spanish to French to American. I'll be talking about how that affected women. And I also have an April Fool's talk that's going to be stories that sound too ridiculous to be true, and one of them will be. And you have to guess as the audience which one is the wrong one.
Don't forget February.
Oh yeah. Oh, what is it? Yeah, love stories, right? No,
yeah.
Like, what am I talking about? So many random things. So natural gas. So there's a great question about natural gas usage. Yes. So I found reports of how they would find small pockets of it. And there are 2 bakeries that I found histories of where the bakeries used the natural gas to fire the ovens. Then, like, once it was done, they were done. So they find little pockets of it, but nothing in huge amounts. Same thing with oil. They find oil in some of these places, but nothing of real substance. Some people are able to squeeze some a little bit out, and sometimes it smells. There's a lot of notes about how, like, really awful smelling some of this oil is that comes out of the ground here. But that doesn't seem to be something that's in big quantities here that they know of. That's the thing that always boggles my mind about mining is, what if you just shift over 10 feet? Like, there could be something totally different there. But you're lucky. You get lucky, I guess.
Well, this was a great program.
Thank you. All right. Well, if no one has questions, I got another one.
Yay.
Yes, Doug brings up the Laclede Christie engine, the little short engine that's on display at the Museum of Transportation out in St. Louis County. That is one of 3 engines locomotives that ran a short rail at that plant that was at Kings Highway in Chippewa. And there's still an alley apparently over there that is a really wide alley just south of the Chippewa intersection. That's where that train went.
Looks like there's another question for you.
Have I worked with them? No, but I respect the heck out of them. They have a lot of great resources online. Someone's asking about the Dogtown Historical Society. They have great resources online. They have people that are very passionate about the Dogtown mining history. So yeah, I've not personally worked with them, but I definitely respect what they do and appreciate it as a researcher. And Doug notes where that alley is. question about this, the syncline, that's the Cheltenham syncline is the one I was referring to. And I feel like a super nerd being able to answer that question. But I do know what you're referring to. There are a lot of, because mining was such a big part of the industry, you know, the economy in the 19th century, there's a lot of really great reports that go into such detail about all the different geologic you know, features and all the different things underneath our feet, underneath St. Louis.
Okay, well, if you could click the slide.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to remind everyone of a few programs that are coming up in the next couple days. We start our Chow and Chats on Wednesday, which is sponsored by Soldiers Memorial. We have exciting programs coming on, as you can see, with one of my favorites that I have to mention, while it's not an STL History Live program, it's a exhibition that we're going to be hosting in just a few weeks online called Gateway to Pride, and there's a launch party that promises a lot of fun. So a lot of great things coming on board, virtual for now, but hopefully very soon, not only can you take a tour with Amanda in person, but come to the museum and participate in a program. Any last questions? It doesn't look like. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I added into the chat my email, just so in case anybody has any additional questions, or if they want to. A lot of times people will add to the stuff that I've been learning. They'll give me some new resources and some new things to learn about, which I always appreciate. And like you said, hope to see everybody on a virtual tour or a walking tour soon.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Amanda. This has been really fun. I love getting back in the saddle, if you will. And again, we've posted on here, if you are not a member and would like to support the Missouri Historical Society, we certainly would love that. And stay tuned when you sign out. When I end this program, a survey will pop up and we would love for you to complete that. Thanks.
Please, please. The survey is so helpful. Please do it. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.